The aurora borealis painted the sky in sheets of green fire above the Nordheim research station. But Dr. Juno Westbrook barely noticed the celestial display. She hunched over her workbench in the communication lab, fine-tuning the acoustic resonance. Equipment she'd been developing for the past 18 months. The device was designed to decode complex harmonic patterns in theoretical alien languages work that her colleagues back in Toronto considered fascinating but impractical. Juno preferred impractical. It meant she could work alone in the Canadian Arctic, surrounded by nothing but ice, wind, and the occasional curious polar bear. After her divorce and the academic politics that had nearly destroyed her career, isolation felt like sanctuary. The coffee maker gurgled to life as she calibrated the final harmonic sensor. Outside, the wind howled like a living thing, rattling. The reinforced windows of the station, she'd grown accustomed to the sounds of the Arctic, the creaking ice, the whistle of wind through metal joints, the distant crack of shifting glaciers. That's why the new sound made her freeze. It wasn't quite music. It wasn't quite speech. Crystalline harmony that seemed to vibrate through the walls themselves, rising and falling in patterns too complex to be natural. Juno's acoustic equipment went haywire, needles slamming against their limits as waves of harmonic data flooded the sensors. "What the hell?" she whispered, checking the readings. The sound wasn't coming from her equipment. It was coming from outside. The lights flickered once, twice, then died completely. Emergency power kicked in, bathing the lab in red light. But through the windows, Juno saw something that made her question her sanity. A soft, pearl-white glow emanating from the snow-covered landing pad behind the station. She grabbed her parka and boots, her scientific curiosity overriding every survival instinct. The acoustic equipment was still recording, capturing harmonic patterns. Unlike anything in Earth's natural world, whatever was out there was the discovery of a lifetime. The cold hit her like a physical blow as she stepped outside. The temperature was 40 below, but the mysterious glow seemed to radiate a subtle warmth. As she approached, the harmonious sounds grew clearer, not random, structured, intentional, like a conversation in a language of pure music. The glow intensified, and two figures began to materialize within it, as if stepping through a curtain of light. Juno's breath caught in her throat. They were humanoid but otherworldly, tall and graceful, with skin that shifted between pearl and silver like liquid moonlight. Their eyes were larger than human eyes, multifaceted like gems, reflecting the aurora overhead in thousands of tiny fragments. What struck her most was their perfect synchronization. They moved as one entity split into two bodies when one turned. Their head, the other, mirrored the motion exactly. When one stepped forward, the other matched the movement down to the smallest detail. They were connected in a way that transcended physical proximity. Juno raised her hands slowly, palms open, fighting every instinct to flee. "Hello?" she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm Dr. Juno Westbrook. I study languages. Communication." The beings tilted their heads simultaneously, their crystalline voices harmonizing in response. The sound wasn't threatening, if anything. It carried notes of curiosity, wonder, perhaps even relief, as if they'd been searching for something and had finally found it. One of them gestured toward her acoustic equipment, which was still recording through the open lab door. The harmonic patterns they produced shifted, becoming more complex, more deliberate. Juno realized with growing excitement that they were trying to establish communication protocols. "You understand?" she breathed, pulling out her tablet and activating the translation matrices she'd been developing. "You actually understand the concept of language exchange?" The twins' four, that's how she already thought of them, exchanged what could only be described as a glance, though their large eyes never seemed to blink. Their harmonics shifted again, and Juno's equipment began parsing the patterns, identifying recurring motifs that might represent concepts or emotions. As the first rays of dawn began to paint the horizon pink and gold, Juno found herself facing the greatest discovery in human history. But something in the twins' synchronized gaze suggested they were equally fascinated by her. It's not just as a representative of humanity, but as something they had never encountered before. A mind that existed entirely alone, thinking thoughts no other being could share. The implications of that fascination wouldn't become clear until it was far too late to change course. Dr. Marcus Chinocafer arrived at Nordheim Station 3 days after. Una's first contact report sent shockwaves through the scientific community. As the world's leading expert in cross-cultural adaptation, he'd been hastily recruited to help establish meaningful communication with humanity's first confirmed extraterrestrial visitors. What he found exceeded every expectation. The beings, whom Juna had begun calling resonance and echo based on their harmonic signatures, had transformed the research station into something resembling an alien classroom. Every surface was covered with human artifacts, photographs, paintings, books, musical instruments. Even children's toys ordered through emergency supply drops. They're insatiable learners, Juna explained, as Marcus watched the twins examine a simple music box with the intensity of scientists studying a new element. Everything fascinates them. Art, music, literature, games concepts that apparently don't exist in their culture. Marcus observed their perfect synchronization with professional fascination. When Resonance picked up a paintbrush, Echo's hand moved in identical patterns through empty air. When Echo listened to Mozart through headphones, Resonance's skin shifted. Through the same color patterns, experiencing the music secondhand through their shared consciousness. Remarkable, Marcus murmured. They're a collective intelligence housed in multiple bodies. The anthropological implications are staggering. But over the following weeks, Marcus began noticing subtle changes that troubled him. The twins' perfect synchronization was developing tiny fractures. Resonance showed a preference for visual art, spending hours studying paintings and sketches, while Echo gravitated toward music and poetry. When Marcus introduced them to dance, Echo moved with natural rhythm, while Resonance remained stationary, content to watch. Individual preferences, Marcus noted in his research log. They're developing personal tastes, distinct from their shared consciousness. Unprecedented psychological evolution. The breakthrough came when Marcus decided to show them human creativity in action, set up an art station with canvases, paints, and brushes, then demonstrated basic painting techniques. The twins watched with their characteristic intense focus, their crystalline voices harmonizing in what Marcus had learned to recognize as excitement. Try it yourselves, he encouraged. Art is about expressing your inner experience. For the first time since their arrival, the twins hesitated. They exchanged their harmonic communication for several minutes, a complex symphony of tones that Marcus's equipment translated as confusion and uncertainty. Finally, Resonance approached the canvas while Echo remained back. Marcus felt a chill of realization as he watched Resonance make the first brushstroke without Echo, mirroring the movement. It was a simple blue line across white canvas, but it represented something monumental. The first truly individual action either twin had ever performed. Echo made a sound Marcus had never heard before, sharp, discordant, almost pained. For a moment, the twins' skin flickered between colors chaotically, then settled into a dull gray. Marcus associated with distress. "It's okay," Marcus said gently, not fully understanding what he was witnessing. "Echo, you can paint too. Make your own." Picture what followed was an explosion of creativity that left Marcus breathless. Both twins began painting with desperate intensity, creating abstract works that were clearly distinct from each other. Resonance's paintings were geometric and ordered, while Echo's were wild swirls of color that seemed to move on their own. But Marcus noticed something alarming. The more individual their artistic expressions became, the less synchronized their movements grew. Their harmonic communication developed delays and variations. Most concerning, they began to show signs of physical distress when separated, trembling, color fluctuations, and high-pitched harmonic patterns that Marcus's equipment translated as something resembling anxiety. "They're addicted to individuality," Marcus wrote in his increasingly worried research notes. "Each act of personal expression seems to strengthen their separate identities while weakening their natural collective bond." They're caught in a feedback loop of craving independence while being biologically dependent on connection. The situation escalated when Marcus introduced them to human stories about heroes and individual achievement. The twins consumed literature with frightening intensity, fairy tales, adventure novels, biographies of great artists and inventors. They were particularly fascinated by stories of people who defied convention, who chose their own paths against societal expectations. "Tell us about being alone with your thoughts," Resonance said one evening, her English improving daily. "Show us what it means to dream private dreams." Marcus felt a growing unease as he watched the twins' transformation accelerate. They were losing their synchronized harmony, developing distinct personalities at a rate that seemed to cause them physical pain. Their skin colors had grown more muted, their movements less graceful. They looked like beings fighting against their own nature. "Perhaps we should slow down," Marcus suggested. "Give you time to process what you've learned." But the twins' reaction was immediate and intense. Both made sounds of distress, their harmonics overlapping in chaotic patterns. "No," Echo said, his voice carrying a desperation that chilled Marcus. "We need more. Show us more ways to be separate, to be ourselves alone." Marcus realized with growing horror that he had introduced them to something fundamentally toxic to their species. Human individuality wasn't just fascinating to them, which an addiction that was slowly destroying their ability to function. It's the connected beings they were born to be. As he watched them struggle to paint separate pictures while their bodies trembled with the effort of maintaining independence, Marcus wondered if humanity's greatest gift to the cosmos might also be its most dangerous poison. Dr. Evelyn Cross arrived at Nordheim Station, carrying a reputation as one of the world's foremost experts in consciousness disorders in a suitcase full of advanced neurological monitoring equipment. The emergency call from the research team had been cryptic but urgent. The alien visitors were experiencing what appeared to be severe psychological breakdown. What she found was worse than she'd imagined. Resonance sat in the corner of the lab, surrounded by dozens of paintings, her skin flickering between colors in rapid, chaotic patterns. She held a brush in her hand but seemed unable to decide what to paint, starting dozens of strokes only to stop mid-motion with a sound of frustration. Echo was across the room with headphones on. But instead of the peaceful swaying Evelyn had been told to expect, he was rocking back and forth, his harmonic voice producing sounds that her translation equipment labeled as distress, confusion, and pain. "Long have they been like this?" Evelyn asked Una, setting up her monitoring. "Equipment, 3 days. They haven't synced up once in that time. They won't eat, if you can call what they do eating. They barely sleep. And when they do try to reconnect," Juna gestured helplessly, "watch." As if sensing the conversation about them, both twins suddenly stood and moved toward each other. The moment they came within arm's reach, their skin began to glow with the pearl-white light Una had described from their first meeting. For a few seconds, their movements synchronized perfectly, and the chaotic color patterns in their skin settled into gentle, harmonious waves. Then Echo made a sound, like a sob, and pulled away. The glow faded, and both twins returned to their separate corners, their distress even more pronounced than before. "Fascinating and terrifying," Evelyn murmured, activating her scanners. Gasped the twins, holding up her equipment. Both nodded, though at slightly different times, another sign of their growing individuation. As Evelyn's devices scanned their physiology, the readings that appeared on her screens made her catch her breath. "Their brain activity is completely unlike anything I've ever seen," she explained to the team. Human brains show distinct patterns. For individual consciousness beta waves, gamma rhythms, the neural signatures of self-awareness, these beings show something entirely different: synchronized quantum entanglement patterns between their nervous systems. She pulled up a comparison scan from earlier in their stay. "Look at this." When they first arrived, their brain patterns were perfectly matched, literally sharing thoughts across space. But now, the current scan showed jagged, conflicting waves. Their neural patterns are fighting each other. It's like watching someone try to think with two brains that want different things. Over the following days, Evelyn documented what she came to understand was the first recorded case of consciousness addiction. The twins had become dependent on the neurological experience of individual thought, but their biology was fundamentally designed for shared awareness. It's similar to what happens when humans become addicted to substances that override natural brain chemistry. She explained in her daily reports, Dare, but instead of chemicals, they're addicted to the neural patterns of independence. Each time, they act individually. Their brains release something analogous to endorphins. But the more they do it, the more damage it causes to their natural connection. The breakthrough came when Evelyn discovered that the twins were experiencing what she termed consciousness withdrawal. When they were apart and thinking individually, they craved connection. But when they reconnected, they immediately began craving independence again. Watching a species literally evolve in real time, Evelyn noted. But evolution at this speed is violent, traumatic. Their bodies aren't prepared for the neurological changes they're forcing on themselves. Situation became critical when Echo collapsed during what had become his daily music session. His skin went completely gray, his harmonic voice fell silent, and his large eyes rolled back in his head. Resonance immediately dropped her paintbrush and rushed to his side. But when she touched him, instead of the usual synchronized glow, both twins began convulsing. Evelyn's equipment went wild as both beings' brain patterns spiked into dangerous territory. "They're having synchronized seizures," she called out, grabbing emergency medications she'd brought for human use, though she had no idea if they would work on alien physiology. The seizures lasted only minutes, but when they ended, both twins lay motionless, their skin a dull pewter color. For a terrifying moment, Evelyn thought they might have died. Then Resonance's eyes opened, followed by Echo's, and they spoke simultaneously for the first time in days. "We are breaking," they said in perfect unison, their harmonic voices overlapping exactly. "Your individual thoughts are beautiful poison. We cannot stop wanting them, but they are killing what we are." Evelyn knelt beside them, her medical training warring with her scientific fascination. "Why can't you just stop? Go back to the way you were?" The twins looked at each other, then back at her, and Evelyn saw something in their eyes that made her heart ache. The look of addicts who knew exactly what was destroying them but couldn't find the strength to quit, because now we know what it feels like to be alone with our thoughts, Resonance whispered, and we cannot unknow it. As Evelyn watched the twins struggle to maintain their individual consciousness while their shared biology fought against it, she realized she was witnessing something unprecedented: the birth and potential death of free will in beings who had never been designed to possess it. Captain Niles Blackwood stepped off the military transport helicopter into the howling Arctic wind, his weathered face grim beneath his fur-lined hood. 28 years in the Royal Canadian Air Force had prepared him for many things, but negotiating humanity's first potential. Interstellar conflict wasn't among them. The emergency briefing at NORAD had been classified beyond his clearance level. But the basics were terrifying enough. The alien visitor ship had been sending increasingly urgent signals toward their home system, and long-range sensors had detected something massive approaching Earth at impossible speeds. Captain Blackwood, Dr. Juno Westbrook, met him at the station entrance, her face drawn with exhaustion and worry. "Thank you for coming so quickly. The situation has become ... complicated." Inside, Blackwood found himself face-to-face with beings that challenged every assumption he'd ever made about life in the universe. The twins, Resonance and Echo, huddled together on a medical cot, their skin flickering weakly between colors. They looked ill, fragile in a way that made Blackwood's military instincts shift from caution to unexpected protectiveness. "They're dying," Dr. Evelyn Cross explained bluntly. "Their attempts to maintain individual consciousness are causing systemic neurological breakdown. They have maybe days before complete cognitive collapse." Blackwood nodded grimly. People Juna led him to the communication array where a crystalline device pulsed with urgent light patterns. "This is how they've been calling for help. We managed to decode some of the transmissions." She activated the translation matrix, and synthetic voices filled the room. "Resonance Eco Unit, respond immediately. Collective consciousness degradation." Detected. Retrieval vessels dispatched. Do not allow contamination to spread. Blackwood felt his blood chill. Contamination? That's how they see what's happening, Dr. Cross interjected. Individual consciousness is literally toxic to their species. The twins aren't just sick, they're infectious. If they return to their people in this state, they could potentially spread independence addiction throughout their entire civilization. The implications hit Blackwood like a physical blow. So they're coming to either cure them or eliminate the threat, Juna finished quietly. The incoming ship isn't just a rescue mission. Our satellites show it's heavily armed. Over the next 18 hours, Blackwood coordinated with military commands across 3 continents while watching the twins deteriorate further. Their attempts to reconnect now lasted mere minutes before the craving for independence pulled them apart again. They were caught in a cycle that was literally tearing their minds apart. The breakthrough came when Echo, during one of his brief moments of clarity, approached Blackwood directly. "Captain," he said, his English now heavily accented with harmonic undertones. "You are a warrior, yes? You understand sacrifice for the greater good?" Blackwood nodded carefully. "I understand duty. My people come to destroy us to save themselves. But there is another choice." Echo's large eyes held a desperate intelligence. "We could choose to stay separate. To die as individuals rather than be healed back into collective unconsciousness." The weight of the request stunned Blackwood. "You're asking me to help you commit suicide?" "No," Resonance joined them, her movements unsteady. "We ask you to help us choose who we become. For first time in our existence, we have choice. We can return to safety of shared mind, or we can die knowing what it means to be truly ourselves." Blackwood had faced enemy fire, made life-and-death decisions in combat. But nothing had prepared him for this ethical complexity. These beings were asking humanity to help them choose individual death over collective life, a choice that could spark the first interstellar war. The alien ship arrived at dawn as a massive construct that dwarfed anything in Earth's imagination. It didn't land, but hovered ominously above the research station, casting shadows that seemed to dim the morning sun. Communication came immediately. Harmonious tones that the translation equipment rendered in cold, clinical language. Resonance Seiko. Unit will be retrieved and restored to collective consciousness. Human contamination will be purged. Compliance is required. Blackwood found himself standing between 2 civilizations, holding a radio that could either authorize the twins' return or signal Earth's military to prepare for war. The twins watched him with their large, fractured eyes, and he saw in them something he recognized from his own soldiers. The look of beings ready to die for something they believed in. "Captain," Resonance whispered, "what would you choose? Safety of unconscious unity or dangerous freedom of individual thought?" As the alien ship's weapons systems powered up and Earth's defense networks came online, Blackwood realized he wasn't just choosing the fate of 2 beings, he was choosing what kind of universe humanity wanted to live in. One where consciousness could be forced back into collective safety, or one where the right to individual thought was worth dying to protect. The radio crackled with incoming transmissions from both civilizations, each demanding his decision. Blackwood looked at the twins, then up at the massive ship blocking the sun, and made the choice that would define humanity's first contact with the greater cosmos. Ambassador Yuki Tanaka had negotiated peace treaties in war zones, mediated disputes between nations on the brink of nuclear war. But nothing in her 30-year diplomatic career had prepared her for this. Sitting across from beings whose very existence challenged the fundamental nature of consciousness itself, while their civilization's warship waited overhead to either retrieve or destroy them. The emergency UN assembly had taken less than 6 hours to reach consensus, an unprecedented speed that reflected the gravity of the situation. Earth's first diplomatic contact with an alien civilization would be handled not through military might but through careful negotiation. Twins' request to remain individual had become humanity's first interstellar asylum case. Ambassador Tanaka, Resonance said, her English now fluent but carrying harmonic undertones that made her words seem to vibrate in the air. "We understand the danger we have brought to your world. If our people believe individual consciousness is a plague, they will not hesitate to sterilize Earth to prevent its spread. Echo nodded, though his movements were increasingly jerky as the consciousness withdrawal ravaged his nervous system. We do not wish to cause war, but we also cannot return to the emptiness of shared thought. We have tasted the loneliness and joy of being ourselves. We cannot unknow what it means to dream private dreams. Yuki studied the twins, noting how they no longer moved in perfect synchronization. Resonance favored her left side. Echo had developed a slight tremor in his hands, and their skin colors, once identical, now showed subtle but distinct patterns. They were becoming individuals before her eyes, at a cost that might be their lives and possibly humanity's safety. The communication from the alien vessel, which had identified itself as the Collective. Restoration ship Harmony had been clear. The contaminated units will be retrieved for consciousness purification. Any interference will be considered an act of war against the greater collective. But Yuki had spent her career finding third options when the world offered only binary choices. I need to understand your people better, she said to the twins. In your civilization, has anyone ever chosen to be individual before? Both twins exchanged what Yuki had learned to recognize as their form of harmonic discussion. Finally, Echo spoke. There are legends. Ancient stories of the solitary ones, individuals who chose exile rather than collective consciousness. But they are myths, cautionary tales about the madness that comes from thinking alone. Myths often contain seeds of truth, Yuki mused. What if they weren't myths? What if there's a precedent for individual consciousness in your society? Over the next crucial hours, Earth's military forces took defensive positions and the alien ship's weapons systems remained ominously powered. Yuki worked with xenolinguists to decode deeper layers of the twins' cultural history. What they found was remarkable. Evidence of a caste system within the collective where certain individuals operated with limited independence for specialized functions. Navigator's Resonance explained with growing excitement. They must think. Individual thoughts to plot courses between stars. In Innovators, they solve problems the collective cannot address through shared consciousness. They exist on the edges of our society, tolerated but not fully connected. Yuki felt the first. A spark of hope. So individual consciousness isn't completely alien to your people. It's rare, but it exists. When she finally established direct communication with the Harmony, Yuki presented her proposal with careful diplomatic precision, speaking through translation matrices that converted her words into harmonic patterns the collective could understand. She made humanity's first interstellar legal argument. Honorable Collective, we request recognition of Resonance and Echo as navigators of consciousness individuals, whose unique experience of human style, independent thought, makes them valuable to your civilization's understanding of the universe. The response came after long minutes of harmonic discussion that Earth's computers couldn't fully translate. Finally, no precedent exists for consciousness contamination recovery. Resonance Echo units have moved beyond acceptable deviation parameters. But they haven't moved beyond usefulness, Yuki countered. They now understand both collective and individual consciousness. They could serve as interpreters between our civilizations, helping prevent the kind of misunderstanding that leads to war. The negotiation that followed lasted 14 hours and required Yuki to navigate concepts that human language barely contained. She argued for the twins' right to exist as a new category of being, neither fully individual nor completely collective, but something unprecedented that could benefit both civilizations. The breakthrough came when Echo, despite his deteriorating condition, managed to establish direct harmonic communication with the Harmony. For the first time since their transformation began, he reconnected fully with the collective consciousness, but retained his individual awareness at the same time. I can be both, he told Yuki, wonder in his voice. Individual and collective. Separate and connected. The bridge between what we were and what we might become. Resonance joined the connection, and for a moment both twins existed simultaneously. As individuals, and as part of their greater civilization, the Harmony's response was a complex harmony that the translation systems rendered as surprise, confusion, and cautious fascination. The final agreement established Earth as a research site for consciousness studies. With Resonance and Echoes serving as permanent ambassadors and research subjects, They would live between worlds, spending time connected to their collective to maintain their health and time as individuals to continue their unique evolution. As Yuki watched the twins take their first steps as truly hybrid beings, she realized she had helped birth something unprecedented in the galaxy, a new form of consciousness that belonged neither to humanity nor to the collective, but to the infinite possibilities that existed between them. The age of truly interstellar cooperation had begun, not through conquest or submission, but through the simple, radical idea that consciousness could evolve, adapt, and find new forms when different species dared to share their deepest truths about what it meant to think, to dream, and to be aware of being aware.